Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Today we're in a different cafe called Pushkin Cafe, and it's one of the poshest cafes in Moscow, in Tverskoy Boulevard. Just to give you an idea of Moscow, I brought this little map. And if you look at the map of Moscow, you will see that it reminds one of a spider's web. It's all about circles and radial lines. And first circle is, of course, the Kremlin. The Kremlin means a fortress in Old Russian. And every town started with a fortress. It was on a hill surrounded by water, and that was the first circle. Then there was a white hill, and then the boulevard ring. So here we are next to the Tverskoy Boulevard ring, and the monument to Alexander Pushkin is in front of us. So this is the boulevard ring, already not a fortification, but for strolling, for the aristocracy to stroll around it. And the last circle, historical, was a garden ring. It was already the country where the aristocracy built their country houses. Of course, now it's a circular motorway. So here we are next to the Tverskoy Boulevard, and in front of Alexander Pushkin, our most prominent poet, writer. He's like Shakespeare to us. But today I'm not going to talk about Pushkin, but I'm going to talk about a fantastic artist. Her name was Olga Slobodkina. And this is a portrait of me that she did. Very fine portrait. And she did it back in 1995, I suppose, or 96, when we got acquainted. And then I wrote a lot of stories about her, one in Passport magazine, and then in the newspapers, and actually my handwritten book that I told you about last time, it happened through her because she wanted me to go to the UNESCO and pick up the booklet for which she did the cover. The Bolshoi Theatre. It was to commemorate a jubilee of the Bolshoi Theatre, all the stars. And she said, well, I'm in a fine company. She was in the company of Alexander Benoit in the inside cover. This is another prominent artist. And so she wanted me to go there and pick up this booklet for her. And I went there. And the man who was a functionary at the UNESCO, I told him about myself, and then he offered that project for the book, a present to 200 Russian libraries. What happened to this book, you know very well. It was not an ordinary book. But anyway, I'm grateful to the publisher who did it. She's also a poet. Her name is Pushkin, and she gave me this book of hers, book of poetry. This is a miniature book with drawings, also quite a unique book. So I treasure it, and I'm very happy to have this book because it's also unique. It's called The Silky Way. That's the way from the east to Europe, connecting our two hemispheres, I don't know how to call it. This is the Silky Way. She's a talented poet, so I'm very grateful to her. And I treasure this book and keep it, and was very happy to find it. So since we're talking about Olga Slobodkina, I would like to show you this catalog. She invited me to participate in this catalog when I was still doing some watercolors and colored graphical works. There she is, and here are her watercolors, and this portrait of me that I brought to share with you. She was from an aristocratic family, but after the October Revolution of 1917, she could not get her higher education, but anyway, she was a student of the famous Russian watercolorist Arthur von Brömssen. He was called the Russian watercolor Mozart, and even the more famous Robert Raphaelovich Falk. Falk used to say that realistic artists make soap, while abstract artists create formula. Well, as any sentences, any saying, the saying is not flawless, but there is something about it. What I want to tell you, when I was in the Metropolitan Museum in New York, and suddenly I had, as if it was a contact, I could feel it with my back, as if somebody was calling me silently. And I turned around and I saw Falk's famous Red Room. I was absolutely fascinated, and that was a painting full of energy, full of mastership, full of, I don't know. And Belikova was their student. Her first teacher, Arthur von Brömssen, she did a lot of lithographs with him, and he also did a lot of portraits of her. And then she was studying under the tutelage of Falk, and Falk helped her to emerge from under the influence of her first important teacher and acquire her own originality. So in this album or catalog, I will also show you my works. I'm not proud of them at all, because as I told you, I couldn't paint what I saw, and therefore I turned to photography. But nevertheless, here they are. Mostly landscapes of Cocktail, the Crimea, which I told you I love, and a poem of mine. And now I'm going to show you the originals. This is the iris. See? And just to prove my point, I will show you the iris I showed you last time, only to illustrate my statement. So this is my iris, a watercolor, colored graphical work, and this is my iris photograph. So you can see the difference, and now you understand why I decided to devote myself totally to photography. But these works are very dear to me, these little miniatures that I did. This work is called The Earth in a Stone, also made in Cocktail. Then also these. They are mostly the rocks and mountains. Of Cocktail, I was only doing landscapes. Then this is a tender work. Has no name, but I was mostly using violet and purple and pink colors. Also, this one, which was in the album, it is called the Islands of Cocktail. Although they were not islands, they were peninsulas and rocks, but in my dream I called them islands. Have some more. Yes, this work was also in the album. That was on my way to inside the continent, not on the shore, not on the seaside. And some others. Let me see. Yes, this is also, it's called Sirukaya, which means a sharp rock. Just a little drawing. Of course, if I continued, probably I would have achieved something, especially in my graphical works, in my drawings, but I'm actually very happy that I turned to photography finally, because I feel more comfortable in this media and I really love it. So also, I would like to go back to where we began and tell you about, when you read, when you write a text or translate a text, you can always read it and then you find mistakes. And when you do a video, what can you do? The mistakes are there. First of all, Naipaul, I told you about that story, Be Wordsworth. But finally, my translation of his story, Hat, is in this book, published in 1993, I suppose, so 30 years ago. And also, I'd like to tell you that Naipaul got his education in Cambridge, in Oxford, not in Cambridge, because I was talking about Cambridge and said that he was educated in Cambridge. So it was Oxford and not Cambridge. Also, that book by Penelope Lively that I translated, I forgot to mention the name. So the name of this author is Penelope Lively. She's very well known and she has got a lot of literary awards and is a very well known writer in the English speaking world. Also, speaking about my second book, With a Letter from Shiraz, I should tell you that the idea of this vertical format came to me when I was working as a translator for Peter Brook's company. When Peter Brook and Natasha Parry brought their production of The Cherry Orchard to the Taganka Theatre, and I worked with them for a month. And there was this actor, Robert Blossom, who gave me this book of his. It's called The Rockefellers, and it's zigzag poetry. I also wrote a zigzag poem influenced by him. So I just wanted to show you this format. Maybe I will have a poetry recital, a special video clip, and then I will tell you all about it. So also, speaking about England, I wanted to show you, I told you about David Buxton, who brought me to Ely and Norwich. And this is a book that he gave me of the story of the Norwich Cathedral with these, stylized illustrations, or maybe they are original, the history of the cathedral and how it was built. So a beautiful book, and it was I had a very special feeling when I found it at home, because I haven't taken it out for a long time, and then you take this book, you find it, and it's like an old friend. David Buxton was about 80 years old when I was in Cambridge, and that was back in 1989. So, and in the 1920s, he was traveling all over Eastern Europe, and as I told you, he wrote a book about the wooden architecture of Eastern Europe and about the churches and cathedrals that were torn down in Moscow. He showed me his photographs of the 1920s. And then, when I was giving guided tours to foreigners, English and American people, I showed them those places that were restored from scratch and showed them his photographs from the 1920s. And so during that period there was just a gap, there was nothing, because they were all torn after the revolution of 1917, and then they were restored. And so that was quite amazing to see the photos, the original photos of the 1920s. Then the buildings were torn down, and then you can see them restored. So it was just they were like eyewitnesses of history. So also I wanted to show you a couple of passport magazines. Yes, another very grave mistake. Of course, this painting and the story that I wrote, of course it's Rubens and not Rembrandt, so it's a typical Rubens Saspia, and this was just a slip of the tongue and a postcard given to me by David Buxton. I also wrote a story about England It's called London Through the Russian Eyes. Back in 2007, so many years have passed, and this is a postcard sent to me by my American friends. This is St. Paul's Cathedral I told you about. So, also in England, Lady North was doing PR for the royal family, and I had the honor of sitting with Princess Diana. I was sitting across from her at the fun tennis tournament, which was the forerunner of Wimbledon. And then she was supposed to stay for the dinner, but she didn't. She said, "I'm going home for a bowl of cereals." But anyway, I met her, and also on that day at the tennis tournament, and also during the dinner, I met a very important person, an Indian prince, Arvind Singh Mewar, and he invited me. He's the head of the Maharana Cultural Foundation. He invited me for the award ceremony in the Maharana Cultural Foundation in his palace complex of Udaipur. This is actually a city within a city. This Udaipur, and then I also wrote a story in Passport magazine, which is called "Discover the Heritage Hotels of India." Because of course, when democracy came to India, all those hotels, all those palaces, they were turned into hotels, and now Shiriji Arvind Singh Mewar is the owner of 8 palace complexes only in Udaipur. So he's one of the richest people in the world, and of course that trip to India was fantastic. And you know, in life everything is so interrelated, so connected. It's just because before I decided to go to India finally, because he was sending me these invitations every year, he came to Moscow for the presentation of the album, the fashion of the royal houses of India, and the organizer of that event was the publisher of this book, Penelope Lively, A Stitch in Time. It was the publishing house called Slova, so they organized that grand posh event. It was in the Indian Embassy, and then at the Historical Museum, and many other fantastic places. And that was back in 2005, and in 2007 I went to India as a guest of honor to the presentation of the Maharana Awards in his Udaipur Palace complex. So you see how things are, one thing leads to another, and it's really very, very amazing. So also last time, since we were talking about translations, I found this very old book, which is over 130 years ago, on this very special thin paper. It's called The Right of the Author for a Translation. So the question of copyright was acute even back then, 130 years ago. So here is some table or something, and this is really a vintage book, a really very interesting book. It was given to me by a friend of my parents who went with them to Moscow University, the mathematical mechanical department, and it was that person who introduced me to Olga Slobodkina, because he was also a great collector of art and books, and he knows everybody in Moscow in the cultural world. So that was another very interesting thing. And as I told you, my interest in the art had started much earlier than I began photographing, and I can just show you the art, the medieval art. I was indulging in medieval art and things like that. And of course I went to all the important exhibitions here, as I told you, and later when the opportunity came, when I was traveling. So all the art museums were my first priority. And when I was in London, I was buying all I could as souvenirs. So here is this miniature, the Thames and the Tower Bridge and the tower. Very beautiful. I still keep it at home. They are also sort of my old friends, all these things. Also, this book as an example of the kind of art that I was studying and I loved very much. And you know, when you see so much art, both classical and medieval and then contemporary, and as Robert Falk said, some formula starts, it's coming to your mind and it starts formulating. And when I was photographing, I was not just photographing sites or something, I was thinking on the basis of what I have absorbed. I tried to create my own formula, so to speak. Also, in England, I got this. There was another picture of a king, of a fairy tale king on a horse, and the nurse's nanny said, "You know what I thought? It's you and your brother." So I don't know where the king is, but I'm still here. It's one of my favorite pictures. Sweet, silly, but I like. Also talking about this book, How Would You Survive in Ancient Egypt, published in Russian. I translated this book, as you remember. I forgot to mention the name of the Russian publisher. His name is Nikolai Naumenko. Now this publishing house is one of the largest in Russia and in Moscow, of course, AST. And I had to hire 2 Egyptologists, because in Egyptology, it's not like in contemporary Russian. For example, the word play in contemporary Russian is pьеса, and in Egyptology, it's mysteria. So what was I supposed to write? I first hired a girl, Olga Slobodkina, but that was not enough. And then I hired Andrei Chagadayev, who's a very famous Egyptologist, probably one of the most famous in the country. And Nikolai Naumenko paid me extra because I had to pay the Egyptologist. So this is the story of this book. And as I told you, it was such a great present, you know, all these great pictures and things. And my brother and I were buying copies of this book and giving them to friends. And finally I found out that I don't have a single copy. So, but for my video operator, Olga Slobodkina, I wouldn't be able to share this book with you today. Also talking about, because during the Soviet times, when this country was closed from the West, from the Western culture mostly, we were studying the arts through reproductions. And some of them, when I found myself in England, and that was my first foreign country, on my last day I went to the Tate and I saw William Blake, who I adored and loved with my heart and soul. I just think he's amazing. And there I was surprised to see that the reproduction equals the original. So the original didn't tell me anything above the reproduction. So William Blake is a totally reproducible artist, while let's say Rembrandt, when I went to the private wing of Buckingham Palace and saw the lady with a fan. No, this is not a painting, it was life itself. The skin was breathing, the hair, the lace was coming out like pop art. All these fabrics, I just don't know how he did that. And I said, Rembrandt, here is my hat. I couldn't say anything else. And the same, surprisingly so, was true of Picasso. When I went to Malaga, and there are 2 museums of Picasso. One is his house museum, and the other one. I was also astounded to see that he had mastered all the techniques of realistic art and all the techniques in graphical art, dry needle, and then lithographs, and everything. And then on the basis of all those techniques, he created his own formula, which is absolutely unreproducible, same as Rembrandt. And that was the first time in my life when I went out of the museum and just passed by the bookstore without even looking, because I didn't want to spoil my impression. I wanted to carry it with myself and to keep it. And then I wrote a story for Passport magazine called The Unreproducibility of Art, and gave the examples of Rembrandt and Picasso. So it depends, and you can never know what will happen when you see the original. Also talking about Egypt, of course I had always been interested in Egypt, and when I first went there in 2006 and I saw the pyramids, I was surprised to see all the steps, and then recollected that we have a book at home published during the Soviet times in Russian, and all the steps were seen very, very clearly. But then I forgot, and when I saw all those steps, it was a surprise for me. So this book also urged me to go to Egypt, but I translated it in 1994, and my first trip to Egypt happened in 2006. But since that time, I've been to Egypt 9 times. And of course, I bought all these interesting books with photos, the museum, the art museum in Cairo, and all the hieroglyphs, and the Karnak temple. Yes, this is my favorite colonnade. And each time I went to a cultural site, of course, when I went to Egypt. So when I was translating this book, I also tried to learn as much Egyptology as I could. Of course, you can spend a lifetime learning Egyptology. And what I found, and why I told you that the text is very interesting but childish, the thing is that you take this level, and then you go deeper, and a deeper level denies and rejects this level. Then you go deeper, and this level rejects the previous one, and so on. But you have to stop somewhere, because I was not going to be an Egyptologist. But anyway, I have printed out these Egyptian hieroglyphics in black and white. Of course, I couldn't study them properly, but at least I had a look at them, and my mind was saturated with that kind of culture, and with their thinking, and how their letters very often coincided with the forms of birds or people or something like that, which we don't have in contemporary Russian anymore, unfortunately. So, also in England, this is a map. This is a map of Sharm el-Sheikh, it's a different country from Hurghada. I first went to Hurghada, and then when I found myself in Sharm el-Sheikh, I only wanted to go there. It's a different country, different people, and it's a different world, amazingly so. So this is a map, the Red Sea and the map of Egypt. Of course, I studied all these sea resorts, and this area, it's as close to me, almost as close to me as Koktebel. So Egypt and Turkey are my countries. Thailand is not. Probably it's because of the climate, maybe, but there must be something else. But anyway, when I'm on my way to Egypt, and from the plane I can already see the land, then my whole system starts shouting out of joy because I feel so happy that every cell in me starts yelling that yes, that is the thing. So here I also brought some photographs from my exhibitions and some other catalogs where the same Cocktail Paragon, the same published very simply in black and white. I participated in that exhibition. It was a group exhibition in one of the Moscow galleries. You know, this is my work that I showed. And another one, and some photos from my exhibitions, from my solo shows, because I started with solo shows, but I think next time I can just bring my works, my art photos in a big format, in the format that I usually display, and then I can show you all these photos, and I will tell you about my formula and my way, how I actually got to that, abstract formula because I started with landscapes. You could see that I was doing landscapes in these miniatures, then I started photographing them, and then I arrived at this abstract formula. I'm developing it, and I feel very happy in this medium. So, and probably one of the further, we don't know, the future is closed for us, but I would like to give one of these video clips to my poetry recital, just to recite some poems to you in English and nothing else. Thank you very much for being with me tonight. I'm very happy to see you again, and until soon. Bye. Thank you.